Hey, what's going on? In this Friday's video, we're going to paint a still life of an apple. So grab your brushes and let's get started. Hey, what's going on? I'm Brian McCormick, and this is Gallery Bri, where every Friday you can learn all about oil painting techniques, materials, and even art marketing. So if you want to improve your painting, and if you want to grow your art business, make that commitment to yourself right now by hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you don't miss the videos that come out every Friday. And if you're new here, make sure you comment new down in the comments so that I can welcome you personally. So with that, let's start the painting. All right, everybody. So I started this painting out by toning the panel with yellow ochre, and then I drew in my composition with a little bit of Venetian red. So I like Venetian red. It's an earth color. It's relatively inexpensive. It's a little bit brighter and stronger than burnt sienna, and it works out pretty good. So right now I'm just starting out by blocking in my dark values and the shadows. I like to start off by doing the shadows first. Oftentimes, right now I'm actually going in and working in the background. So sometimes I treat a still life the way that I would treat a landscape and work from the back towards the front. So as you can kind of see, I do jump around a little bit. So I still consider this the back where I'm painting right now, because it's going to be, behind the apples, and it just makes it easier to layer the paint over top of that if I do this first. So I'm pretty much going to be doing this for a good portion of the video here. Now, I took this photo myself, so I find that painting every day, sometimes I run out of material to paint, can't always find good reference material, and so I actually took this photo. I just had some orange cloth that I had lying around, and I just set it up, and then I used the light in my studio coming from the right, and then I decided to make a composition based off of that. Now, you'll see that the apples overlap. One of the things that you'll hear different people talk about is there's no kissing in composition. And what that means is that you don't want the edges of your subjects to line up exactly with each other. You want to have a little bit of overlap. Now, just like anything else, any kind of rule, so to speak, in painting, these are definitely things that can be broken. There's probably plenty of masterful painters out there who have, put two things together and had them line up, perfectly. But for this here, I decided that I would overlap them a little bit, and I thought that it made for a nicer composition. Now you can see over on the left-hand side where I have my reference, I actually use this app, and I believe it's called Art Tools. And just go to your app store and you'll be able to get it. And then you can put on the rule of thirds, you can put on the Fibonacci grid, you can choose from all kinds of different things, and it makes it really helpful for lining up your focal points and drawing things in, because when you have it gridded up like that, you can transfer that onto your surface much more easily. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just putting some of the midtones in on the rear apple, and I'm using a palette of primarily yellow ochre and Venetian red, Payne's gray, and some Mars black, and my white is titanium white. So I mix most of my dark colors actually with the Mars black and the Venetian red. So that's how I get my dark purples. And I find that Mars black actually works out pretty good. I know a lot of teachers will say, don't use black. And I think it's just to prevent people from using black straight out of the tube. You definitely don't want to do your shadows with just pure black, and it'll look flat and it won't add a lot of depth to your painting. So oftentimes the way that I make really dark shadows are with things like Venetian red and Mars black, so that it's not a pure dark color. You have some variation with it, and that way you can actually vary the degree of how dark you want your shadows, and also you can vary the temperature of it as well. So most blacks, like lamp black, ivory black, and Mars black, they're pretty cool because they're actually really dark blues. If you really thin them down, you'll see that they have a little bit of a blue tint to them. And if you use the Zorn palette, you have no blue, and you'll actually notice that those kind of gray down into a very nice bluish color. And when you compare it to everything else, it really does look like blue. So here I'm just going in and I'm still putting in some of the darker parts of the background, some of the midtones and a little bit of the lighter tones. And so again, just kind of jumping around a little bit, did the apple a little bit, now I'm doing some of the background. Now the brush that I'm using is a Princeton 6 angled bright, and it's a Catalyst brush. So it's a synthetic bristle brush, and I really like these brushes. They have a really firm bristle to them. They last a really long time. They're very durable. And what I do to make them last even longer is I clean my brushes with safflower oil, and it really helps to save the bristles as opposed to using a screen and a mineral spirit. Now you can use screens as well in a brush cleaning tank with oils, but I typically will just dip it in a jar. Now if you want, you can use 2 jars. You can have one that's kind of a dirtier oil, and then you can have another one that's a cleaner oil, so you can clean it in one and then dip it in the other if you really want to get it clean. I actually don't worry too much about getting perfectly pigment-free brushes every single time because I paint with a very limited palette. You know, I kind of like how the colors will get, you know, some people call them muddy, but I find that kind of a grayed down mixed pigment actually will look pretty good. But I mean, that's just my personal preference. Everybody is a little bit different the way that they paint. Some people want to have very pure color when they paint. Other people are okay with having grayed down muddy colors. So it's completely up to you. And so right now I'm just putting in a little bit of the shadow colors underneath the apples and just kind of bouncing around. So you'll notice that I'm bouncing around the canvas here, or the panel, quite a bit. Once you have a color loaded in your brush, it's a good idea to look around and see where else that would go. So it just makes it much more efficient if you're able to, you know, identify those different areas where you're going to need that color. You already have your brush loaded up, and now you can go around and add that wherever you need to add it. And it just makes it a much more efficient way to paint. So now with this apple, I'm going ahead and adding in some of the darker areas there. It's not as much shadow as you can see on the other apple, and actually it's just a different color apple. The apple in the back is a much darker red, and the apple in the foreground is more of kind of a pinkish yellow color. So, you know, I had to change that up a little bit as well. And then I'm just, you know, putting in the shadow there on the, you know, the inside of the apple, and putting a little bit down there. Now with shadows, there are, you know, different levels of shadows and highlights. You know, you're going to have, you know, your core shadow, which is probably going to be the darkest part of your shadow on an object. And then below that, most likely, you're going to have some reflected light. So let's say you're painting a sphere like an apple. The darkest part isn't going to be the lowest part of the object that's furthest away from the light. There's going to be some reflected light there. So, it's not a constant gradient of just light to dark. It's going to be light to dark to, possibly, even a midtone if you have some of that reflected light going on there. And, I'm going to continue to, adjust the values here with this apple. Now, my colors aren't spot on. I wasn't really going for spot on color for this one. You can see the apple is, kind of pink. And actually in my reference photo there on the phone, it's a little bit washed out on camera. It wasn't that washed out when I was looking at it and referring to it. And this is actually one of the reasons that painting from life is very helpful, because you can tend to get pretty washed out highlights and you can get really dark shadows in your pictures, and it can make it really difficult to really match that when you're painting. Now, if you paint from life, it definitely makes it much more easier. So when you have the opportunity, it's definitely helpful to paint from life. But if you know what to look for, and if you know the pitfalls of painting with photographs, you can still definitely do that. You just need to know how to correct for areas that are washed out in the highlights and areas that are, possibly too dark in the shadows. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of depth in your shadows, because you don't want it to just look, flat. You want to have a little bit of depth in there. It definitely makes the painting more interesting. All right, hopefully that was a helpful video for you. If it was, please give this video a thumbs up and comment helpful down in the comments. Every time you leave a like and a comment, it makes this video more visible to people who want to learn how to paint just like you. And if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see, comment those down below too. Love to make a video on some topics that you would like to see. And as always, make sure you hit the subscribe button right here, and make sure that you hit that notification bell so you don't miss the videos that come out every Friday. And you might like this video over here too. So with that, hope you guys are doing well, and we'll see you next Friday.